in a generation. But first, civil rights activists and even fellow Republicans are calling for the immediate resignation of GOP party official Marilyn Davenport, accusing her of racial hatred. Davenport sent this photo by email last Friday to an unknown number of elected officials. It features the president's face superimposed over that of a baby chimpanzee in the arms of a family of primates. In addition to the image, she added this phrase, "Now you know why no birth certificate." Davenport has admitted sending the email, but called it a joke, and that it was only meant for her friends, and she's adamant she will not resign. In her defense, she wrote, "One only has to go to YouTube or Google Images to see a plethora of lampooning videos and pictures of Obama, Bush, and other politicians. That being said, I will not resign my Central Committee position over this matter that the average person knows and agrees is much to do about nothing." In an attempt to comprehend the incomprehensible, I'm joined now by the Reverend Al Sharpton, President of the National Action Network, and MSNBC contributors Goldie Taylor and Toure. Good afternoon to all of you. Reverend Al, she says she found it amusing and fun. Can you help us and her understand why it's neither amusing nor funny?
Well, first of all, the historic depiction of African Americans as being monkeys or chimpanzees or apes, you cannot divorce that from the reference she makes directly in this email and his parentage and tying it to the birther issue. And I remind people, Martin, that it was the same kind of connection with the cartoon in a New York tabloid that thousands of us, National Action Network and others, marched on, that even Rupert Murdoch apologized for. So it would be hard for me to believe that a Republican official would know the offense, would know what it would kind of reaction it would bring about when Rupert Murdoch himself, in an unprecedented apology, said, "No, we can't do these kinds of lampooning." If Rupert Murdoch can say that my paper should not have that kind of cartoon, then what is so hard and difficult for this woman to understand?
Goldie, she says in her defense that there are plenty of places where abuse has been cast on other politicians. And I went online just now and I read George W. Bush, described as a retard, a brainless oaf, a man who couldn't string two words together in a single sentence without falling over, an embarrassment to humankind. She has a point, doesn't she? This has been going on for ages. Everybody gets abused. It's part of the game.
I think she should be ashamed of not being ashamed of herself, first of all. I think at the end of the day, sure, there have been a lot of satirical and bad humor things that have happened about a lot of presidents, but this really goes beyond the pale. This is what they say, jumping the shark. This goes directly to some of the historic prejudices, some of the things that we've seen over the years, tying us directly to apes in Africa. And so I think this goes over the line. It jumped the shark in a way that's unconscionable. Now, whether or not she should resign, the same good people that elected or appointed her to the post should be the same good people who make that determination. They should say to themselves, is this someone who we want to represent us? And that's the question for the people who elected her.
Toure, I wonder if I could bring you in, because I was reading earlier today The Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama before, when he was senator, and he says, spending one's days refuting stereotypes can be a wearying business. It's the added weight that many minorities, especially African Americans, so often describe in their daily round. To what extent, then, do you think, Toure, that this view of Marilyn Davenport is represented by the broader community?
Well, I can't speak to that. I mean, I can see that there is a consistent amount of racism coming out of the Tea Party movement. They talk about taking the country back. Who are they taking the country back from? The black man who's running the country and perhaps the woman who's at the top of the House of Representatives, right? The blacks and the women who are taking over. We see John Lewis saying he's getting the N-word hurled at him as he's trying to speak to these people. And now this and other sorts of things. And it's a pervasive garden variety sort of racism to link black people to less than human. We are not fully, we're 3/5 of a person. We're not fully able to be mentally able to compete with white people because we're animals, we're chimps, we're gorillas. And it's not appreciated, and it's a constant attack on the intellectual ability of black people that Barack is talking about in that comment that we see constantly. When we're expected to dance or sing or jump, well, we know we can do that, but can you guys think as well as us? No. And even this brilliant man is dealing with that? It's not right.
Reverend Dow, do you think she was conscious of any of the history? I mean, I've lived in this country for 6 years, but I know how racist that particular depiction would be and the history of it. Is it possible that she really didn't know?
Well, even Martin, if it was possible that she didn't know, then why be so arrogant and insensitive when it's raised to you saying, I'm not going to apologize, I'm not going to deal with it. So let's take the outside chance she didn't know. Then one would say, oh, if I offended you, if I was unaware, then let me deal with that. That is not her attitude at all. And like I said, when a Rupert Murdoch can even take that step. Because unlike the quotes that you quoted about former President Bush or others, they were not based on his race or his ethnicity and a history connection there to how those races have been depicted.
No, but they were insulting. They were
very insulting and wrong. But again, this is bigger than lampooning you. If I'm lampooning who you are and dealing with a racial stereotype, and I'm an official of a party, then I think that's beyond the pale.
Martin, I would say it's impossible for her to not know. You can't live in this country and not be aware of those sort of things that have been going on, that sort of ideas that have been fed into the air in this country for so many decades.
So she was absolutely aware of it.
Well, let us not forget that this is the same woman who forwarded the watermelon emails where there were depictions of watermelons across the White House lawn. This is the same woman who defended, not including grass in a certain area of Orange County because they said it attracted Mexicans. So this woman herself has a track record that has to be examined, and I don't think that should go, unspoken about.
Have we learned anything from the shooting in Arizona? You'll remember, 6 people murdered. Gabby Giffords, Congresswoman, is shot in the face, and everybody says enough of this kind of abusive rhetoric. And what have we got today but an image depicting the president as a monkey?
Well, this speaks to, and Donald Trump even, went further than that over this weekend when he said, that the president did not have the grades to get into Harvard. And so he must have been there by affirmative action. I'm certain he hasn't seen the president's transcript. I think he's making an assumption that the president, being black, had to have benefited by some outside program other than by his
He actually said that President Obama did poorly at school as well. At high school, he said he did poorly at school and he got into Harvard by some kind of mystery.
But I think what all of this shows, Martin, and this is why some of us are trying to be very careful here, whereas we hold the president and others accountable, that we don't feed into this kind of blatant racial kind of atmosphere that some seem determined to bring the 2012 election. All of a sudden, we hear Trump taking an indirect shot at affirmative action. We have this Republican official that from watermelon now to apes. There is an ugly racial atmosphere that some want to bring in, and I think responsible people of all races and all leaders ought to stand up and say, wait a minute, you're right. This ugliness is what leads to things that we said we were not going to have. We need to cut it off now, and we need to do it in a very definitive way.
And Martin, isn't it amazing how affirmative action is used here as instead of something that when the playing field is leveled, black people can get into a Harvard law and excel and become senator and president. Instead of that, Trump wants us to see it as proof that black people are lesser, which is completely opposite of the purpose of affirmative action. It's so insidious.
Do you think, Torre, she should resign?
I absolutely think she should resign, and I think the people around her should see that their movement is completely delegitimized by her being a part of it.
Reverend Dow, some of her party officials, to be fair to them, have said that comment was dripping in racism and she should go.
And I think that if some of her colleagues, the Republicans themselves, said that is the right thing. I think, again, the fact that she so arrogantly dismisses it makes one really wonder whether Tory is right, that she knew all along what she was doing, because it would seem to me if I make a mistake, then I would say, wait a minute, that was not my intent. I would not arrogantly try to defend something that I didn't intend to do in the first place.
Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. What I agree with is, on the back end of this, she called the very people who leaked this email cowards. And so if you take a look at how she has responded, certainly that leaves a lot to be desired. But people who are members of the executive committee of these county organizations, they're elected by a system of delegates. It's incumbent upon those delegates to come together to bring her out of that office. I think it is a responsibility on their part. They can say what they want in those kinds of articles. Responsibility on them to call for election.
Martin, I love how she says it was just meant for her friends. I mean, what's a little racism among friends?
Absolutely. Tori, thank you. Goldie Taylor and the Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you so much indeed. Next, the Donald brags that his is bigger than Mitt's. Two men with money duke it out when we come back.
Hey, Smart, you booked your room yet? Nope. See, Hotels.com has